The dry wind blew through the capital city of Ouagadougou, whistling past the towering government buildings like a quiet warning. Inside the fortified presidential palace, President Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader who had risen to power with fire in his eyes and justice on his tongue, stood at the heart of his legacy. Surrounded by aides, soldiers, and diplomats, he embodied the image of control. But unknown to him, the most lethal threat stood just steps behind him. Captain Lionel Bako, a trusted member of the president's elite security unit, had served Traoré for years. Always silent, always efficient, Lionel was the kind of man who attracted little attention, which made him perfect for his role, and for betrayal. The day had started like any other. Traoré had just returned from a surprise inspection of a rural base. He was lauded by the media, hailed as a people's president. Yet, in the shadows, whispers moved. Men in suits and uniforms exchanged brief nods. Deals were struck in silence. And at the center of it all, the trigger was being prepared, not in a suitcase or drone, but in the heart of a man once loyal. Traoré walked into his office with his red beret slightly tilted forward, his military uniform crisp. Maps, intelligence reports, and video feeds lined the walls. He placed a cigar between his lips and lit it calmly, peering at a photo of his mother on the corner of his desk. "Anything from Sector 4, he asked, his voice gravelly but composed. "Clear, sir," replied Lionel, standing to the side with folded arms. "You're quiet today," Traoré said, half smiling. "You used to be more talkative when I first promoted you." "I've learned, Mr. President. Talking too much gets people noticed." Traoré laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "True. I suppose that's why I trust you." Those words struck deeper than any bullet would. Later that evening, a closed-door meeting of the inner cabinet was convened. Tension buzzed in the air. Economic sanctions were tightening. There were rumors of a pending coup, foreign interference, and high-level leaks. "I'm telling you, Ibrahim, the Americans know something," said Minister Jibril, slamming a folder on the table. "They always know something," muttered Traoré, flipping through the pages. "What we need to focus on is controlling the military zones around the northern border. If we lose that, we lose the whole chessboard." His words were sharp. Strategic. He was no fool. He knew enemies lay both outside and inside his circle, but never suspected the eyes watching him closest. That night, Lionel walked past layers of armed guards, saluting and being saluted. The pistol in his waistband felt heavier than usual. His hands were cold. He returned to his quarters, opened the encrypted message on his burner phone, and read the line that sealed his fate. "You know the time. Do it clean. Do it fast. Your family will be protected." He swallowed hard. The next morning came fast. Birds chirped as if nothing was amiss. Traoré stood on the steps of the palace, greeting a group of soldiers before their deployment. Cameras flashed. The national anthem played softly from a distant radio. The president adjusted his cap and turned to Lionel. "Escort me inside. Let's finish the defense review." They walked together, side by side, like always. But this time, Lionel's fingers brushed against cold steel. Inside the private corridor, dim, quiet, secured, Traoré paused. "Lionel," he said. "You've served me well. I've been thinking of moving you up. Maybe Minister of Security." Lionel's heart pounded. He reached for his side. A single bead of sweat ran down his temple. And then... "Stop right there." A voice shouted from behind. Traoré turned. Two guards ran into the hallway, weapons drawn. Traoré blinked. "What is this?" "Sir," said one of the guards, panicked, "we intercepted a message. There's an attempt on your life." From inside. Lionel froze. The pistol was in his hand. He didn't remember drawing it. It was just there, like an extension of his will. Traoré's eyes locked onto Lionel's. For the first time, the president wasn't composed. He was confused. Betrayed. Lionel, he whispered. The silence between them lasted only a second, but it echoed like thunder. Lionel, Traoré repeated, his voice softer, almost pleading now. You don't have to do this. The pistol trembled in Lionel's grip. He didn't lower it, not yet. The guards behind him held their breath, unsure whether to fire or fall back. The hallway, once a sanctuary of state security, had turned into a crucible of betrayal. I didn't want this, Lionel said at last. But you left me no choice. Traoré straightened. His jaw clenched, the military edge returning. I raised you. Brought you in when you had nothing. I trusted you with my life. And this is how you repay me. Lionel's eyes didn't flinch. You made enemies, Ibrahim. You went too far. The people in the shadows? They're not asking anymore, they're ordering. Coward, Traoré spat. Before Lionel could respond, a shot rang out. But it wasn't from Lionel's pistol. One of the guards, acting on instinct, had fired. The bullet hit Lionel in the shoulder, sending him crashing to the floor. The pistol clattered down the hallway, spinning like a fallen crown. Blood spread quickly across his tracksuit as the guards rushed forward. Secure him, shouted Traoré, pulling his own sidearm. I want answers. Alive. But Lionel wasn't screaming. He wasn't even resisting. His face remained grim, unmoved by the pain. As the guards pinned him, he looked up at the president. You're not safe, he said through clenched teeth. Even now, you're not safe. I was just the beginning. Traoré froze. That sentence carried a weight heavier than a bullet. 3 hours later, Lionel was in the underground detention wing of the palace. His wound was bandaged, and a medical officer stood by. Not for his comfort, but to keep him alive for interrogation. President Traoré, standing behind a mirrored wall, watched silently. On the other side of the glass, Minister Jibril and 2 intelligence agents reviewed the intercepted message Lionel had received. It was routed through Mali, then Turkey, bounced off a few VPN tunnels, said the agent. We're tracking the network, but whoever is behind this, they knew what they were doing. Traoré leaned forward. What else? The agent hesitated. Sir, we believe elements of your own military may be compromised. High-ranking ones. Possibly even inside the war cabinet. Traoré's eyes narrowed. They're not planning a coup, he said grimly. They're planning an execution. Meanwhile, in a hidden bunker 2 miles from the capital, a council of powerful men sat under dim lights. Some wore military uniforms stripped of insignia. Others wore civilian suits with the polish of corruption. At the head of the table sat Colonel Issaka Doumbia, a former general ousted by Traoré's reforms. He survived, one of the men muttered. Doumbia tapped his finger on the steel table. I knew Lionel might hesitate. He didn't hesitate, said another. He failed. No, Doumbia said, almost amused. He planted the seed. The room went quiet. Doumbia stood and turned toward the large screen showing live news footage. President escapes assassination attempt, nation in shock. Now the world sees he's vulnerable, Doumbia said. And now, his paranoia will grow. He'll purge his own men. Crack down harder. And in doing so, he'll lose what little loyalty he had left. He smiled. The real war begins now. Back at the palace, Traoré sat alone in the war room. Maps, satellite images, intercepted calls, all laid out before him. But his mind wasn't on strategy. It was on betrayal. He replayed Lionel's words again and again, you're not safe. Even now. The door opened. A figure stepped in, General Adama Sankara, head of presidential intelligence and one of Traoré's oldest allies. You look like a man who hasn't slept, Sankara said, taking a seat across from him. I can't sleep, Traoré admitted. Not when I don't know who's standing behind me with a knife. You're not alone, Sankara said. Aren't I? There was a long pause. We've detained 10 suspects with links to the same message server, Sankara reported. But nothing points directly to the source. Whoever's behind this, they've been planning it for years. Traoré looked up. I want a list of everyone who's ever sat in this room with me, he said. I want their bank records. Their phone logs. Their family trees if you have to. I don't care how long they've served. I want to know who I'm dealing with. Sankara nodded. And one more thing, Traoré added. Don't trust anyone. Not even me. In the cell, Lionel stared at the cold ceiling above him. He was pale from blood loss, his arms strapped to a sling. But his lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. He could hear the guards murmuring outside. The cameras were on. He knew they were watching. Let them. Because he wasn't finished. And neither were the people who sent him. Morning crept across the capital, but peace did not come with it. The city was under lockdown. Roadblocks at every major junction, helicopters circling above, soldiers stationed on rooftops. For the citizens of Ouagadougou, it felt like war had arrived silently in the night, and no one was sure who the enemy was. Inside the presidential palace, a storm was brewing. President Traoré was no longer taking chances. Everyone was under scrutiny. Loyalty tests. Cross-examinations. Even his closest allies were questioned. General Sankara returned to the war room, face grim. We found encrypted financial transfers linked to Colonel Doumbia, he said. Shell companies. Offshore accounts. One of them made a payment 2 days before the attempt, routed to an old contact in Lionel's unit. Traoré didn't flinch. So he's alive. Very much, Sankara replied. He's rebuilding. Quietly. Strategically. Traoré paced the room. I should have finished him when I had the chance. I let him resign with honor. You thought it would keep the military unified. I was wrong. In the underground cell, Lionel's interrogation resumed. The room was brightly lit, sterile. On the other side of the table sat Commander Yusuf, head of internal security. A hard man with no tolerance for ambiguity. You know who sent the order. Name him, Yusuf barked. Lionel said nothing. Where is Doumbia hiding? Still nothing. Yusuf slammed the table. You were once a patriot. Where is your honor now? Lionel met his eyes, unblinking. Honor is dead. You buried it when you followed a man who pretended to save the country while building his own empire. Yusuf's nostrils flared. Do you think you'll win? Lionel asked calmly. You've already lost. You just haven't realized it. Yusuf leaned forward. Then explain something to me. Why didn't you pull the trigger? Lionel looked down at his bandaged arm. I wanted to, he said quietly. But I saw his face. And in that moment, I remembered the boy he saved. The family he fed. The soldier he believed in. Yusuf narrowed his eyes. So you do still have a conscience? No, Lionel said, I have a plan. Meanwhile, intelligence agents tracked suspicious movements in the outskirts of the city. A convoy of unmarked vehicles had been seen entering a warehouse district under heavy guard. Recon drones were scrambled. Inside the command center, General Sankara and Traoré monitored the live feed. Thermal scan shows at least 15 armed men, Sankara said. And what appears to be communications equipment. Traoré leaned in. That's not a warehouse. That's a command post. He pointed to a figure entering the building, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with military precision. Zoom in. The image sharpened. Colonel Doumbia, Sankara confirmed. He's back. Traoré stood. Send the strike team. No more warnings. By nightfall, elite forces surrounded the compound. Drones buzzed overhead. Snipers took position on rooftops. The air was electric with tension. Inside, Doumbia received the alert calmly. He looked around at his men, former officers, mercenaries, and defected soldiers. This is not the end, he said. It's the spark. He opened a steel case. Inside, satellite phones, encrypted drives, and a folder marked Operation Nightfall. If they take this place, they still won't stop what's coming. The plan doesn't end here. It starts here. The assault began at 2:13 a.m. Explosions rocked the outer walls. Smoke filled the compound. Shots echoed through the night. Doumbia and his lieutenants fought back fiercely, but the presidential forces moved with precision. Room by room, they cleared the stronghold. By dawn, the operation was over. Dead bodies littered the floor. Weapons seized. Data drives recovered. But Doumbia was gone. A secret tunnel had been discovered beneath the warehouse, leading to the city sewer system. Tracks indicated at least 2 vehicles had escaped hours before the assault began. He knew we were coming, Sankara said bitterly. Traoré studied the seized materials, maps, names, launch codes. This wasn't just an attempt on me, he muttered. This is a network. An insurgency. Sankara nodded. They call it the Lions Denver. A coalition of former commanders, businessmen, foreign operatives, all with one goal, to erase your presidency. Traoré clenched his jaw. Then let's give them a reason to fear it. Elsewhere, in a dark conference room in Ghana, Doumbia sat with 2 foreign advisors and a tech expert. He placed the encrypted drive on the table. They think this is over, he said. But the virus is already in their system. By the time they find it. He smirked. The nation will be ours. President Traoré, more vigilant than ever, ruled from behind layers of security and intelligence. His speeches became shorter, sterner. The man once hailed as a revolutionary hero now looked worn, his face shadowed by suspicion and strain. Every step he took was monitored. Every word calculated. The weight of betrayal had begun to reshape him. Yet, the threat was far from over. Inside the Digital Forensics Division at the Ministry of Intelligence, technicians worked around the clock to decrypt the seized drive from Doumbia's compound. Firewalls, encrypted tunnels, remote kill protocols, it was more than a military blueprint. It was a manifesto, layered with names, foreign funding channels, and coded triggers for mass sabotage. This isn't just a coup, said the lead analyst. This is a cyber war. They've already infiltrated our communication grid. One switch, and we go dark. Elsewhere in the city, General Sankara met quietly with Lionel, still in custody but treated medically under close supervision. We know you were just one piece of it, Sankara said. I was, Lionel admitted. But I know the others. The ones who aren't in hiding. Sankara tilted his head. Are you offering names? Lionel didn't answer directly. He stood slowly, wincing from his healing wound, and walked to the mirror in his cell. When I was recruited, he said, they showed me videos. Files. Things I didn't want to believe. Corruption. Kill orders. Civilian deaths passed off as collateral. They told me it came from the top. From the president? That's what they said. And I believed it. Until the moment I saw him again, standing there, still wearing that same red cap. Sankara's brow furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying, Lionel turned back, that if you want to stop Doumbia, you need me. President Traoré wasn't convinced. He met with Sankara late into the night. You want me to trust the man who almost put a bullet in my skull? He didn't, Sankara said. That means something. He's our key inside. He knows the structure. He's also the reason half the army thinks I'm vulnerable. Traoré stood by the window, looking out at the city's skyline, once bright, now dark and quiet. Curfews, fear, and silence had become the norm. If I let him out, he said, and he runs, you'll pay for it. Sankara nodded. I understand. Traoré turned. Fine. But he doesn't leave your sight. 3 days later, Lionel was back in tactical gear. The scars still fresh, the doubts still lingering. He led a covert task force to a suspected rendezvous point in the eastern region, a communications relay center allegedly tapped by the Lion's Den network. The mission was supposed to be a sweep. But what they found was something else. Inside the abandoned building were servers, weapons crates, and one bound prisoner, barely conscious, bruised, gagged. It was Major Halidou, a field officer long thought to be missing in action. When unbound, Halidou whispered one word before fainting. Sankara. The team exchanged confused glances. Lionel's eyes narrowed. Get him to a secure location, he ordered. Now. Back at the palace, President Traoré was handed the report. He reread the name 3 times, General Adama Sankara, his friend, his strategist, his brother in arms. He was the only one, Traoré said slowly, who knew about Halidou's unit. Lionel sat across the room, silent. Traoré looked up. You think it's possible? I think, Lionel hesitated, we've been looking at the wrong lion. Later that night, Sankara entered the war room alone. He poured himself a drink, stared at the photos on the wall, of their battles, of their victories, of their oaths. He sighed. I never wanted it this way, he said aloud. But loyalty has a price. Behind him, Lionel stepped out of the shadows, pistol raised. Sankara didn't flinch. So you found out. I trusted you, Lionel said. No. You trusted a lie. Sankara turned slowly. You think Ibrahim is clean? That he didn't kill men who refused to kneel? That he didn't let villages burn to punish rebels? Lionel's hand shook. He's a lion, too, Sankara continued. Just better at hiding the blood on his teeth. He's not the one who betrayed us, Lionel whispered. No. He's the one who made betrayal necessary. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. Outside, chaos erupted. Explosions. Gunfire. The palace lights cut out. Traoré's voice came through the radio, we're under attack. Secure the east wing. Sankara smirked. It's begun. He lunged. A shot fired. Sankara dropped, clutching his side. But the damage had been done. The palace, the very symbol of power, was under siege. The attack was coordinated. Not chaotic, not desperate. Every blast struck with purpose. Every bullet echoed with design. The eastern wing of the palace burned as Traoré was escorted through the smoke-filled corridors by a ring of bodyguards. Dust and ash swirled through the air. Outside, insurgent forces breached the outer courtyard, advancing with military precision. These weren't rebels, they were trained operatives, defectors, loyalists to the Lion's Den. In the war room, Lionel dragged a bleeding General Sankara to cover, slamming the reinforced door shut behind them. Sirens wailed above, then cut out as the power grid died completely. You betrayed him, Lionel spat. You helped Doumbia. Sankara coughed blood, laughing weakly. I didn't help him. I built him. Lionel's breath caught.